Okay, Mooly, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Welcome everybody to the DSS webinar for January. We have this webinar going every month. This month is about continuing the panel about demystifying security. The DeFi Security Summit is interested in all topics related to security, and we are very broad. We already had lectures on networks, on security networks, on auditing, on tools. Please feel free to suggest topics. You can ping Nathan, who is the organizer. You can ping me. You can talk to a lot of people. We are interested to get to cover as many topics as possible, in addition to the annual DeFi Security Summit. So let me pass to Rajiv, who is the moderator, and actually is one of the originator of the DeFi Security Summit and also for the webinar. So I'll pass it to you, Rajiv, for today.
Thank you, Mooly. Thanks, Nathan. So welcome everyone to this seminar, to the webinar, DSS webinar format. And like Mooly said, we hope this will be as exciting, if not more, than the panel we had at DevCon Bangkok with with all the panelists here. So I'll be your moderator, and really glad to be here with all the esteemed panelists. We will start off by a quick round of introductions, and then jump right in. So I'll start. So I'm Rajiv. I am the founder of Securium, which is known for its smart contract security bootcamp, as well as TrustX, which is an event dedicated to Ethereum security. And personally, myself, I've been doing security research pretty much my entire career. Looking at crypto Web3 security for the last 8 years or so. And right now I do security reviews with Spearbit Cantina. So that's me. And we'll go around the room, starting off. We'll try to keep this alphabetical, so just so that we have some order in mind. So we'll maybe start with Hari and go ahead.
Hey, I'm Hari. I'm one of the founders and the CEO of Spearbit and Cantina. Previously, I used to work on the Solidity compiler at the Ethereum Foundation. So yeah, that's pretty much about me. Looks like Josselin should go next.
Hey. Yeah, so I'm Josselin. I'm the engineering director of the blockchain team at 12bit. If you don't know us, briefly, we're a security company where we work around all the stack from blockchain component to application security to cryptography and so on. And yeah, really looking forward to continue this discussion that started a couple of months ago.
Matthias?
Yes, again, thanks a lot for the invite here. Happy to be here. So I'm Matthias. I'm a managing partner and CTO at Chain Security, similar to Spearbit and so on, one of the auditors in the space. And my background is in IT security also for most of my career, both in like big data, AI nowadays, and blockchain since 2017. Who's next?
Michal?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Michal. I'm Security Assessments Manager at Sigma Prime. So Sigma Prime is certainly an auditing company, but we also developers and maintainers of Lighthouse, the consensus client. Myself spent over a decade in Web2 security as a penetration tester, and probably about 4 or 5 years in Web3.
Thank you. So I'm last. So I'm Mooly Sagiv. I'm academic in the area of programming language and formal methods, also co-founder of Satora together with Shelly Grossman. Satora is specialized in formal verification. We also develop other tools. So last week we released an open source tool called Quorum, which is developed with other BGD. It's for reviewing governance proposal. And actually this week we are releasing Safeguard. So Safeguard is an extension of the Go Ethereum client for monitoring. You can monitor without remote procedure call, actually used now for Uniswap v4 Uniswap v3, also Aave v3, so it will be released open source today. Also, the Sator approval will be released in a few weeks in East Denver. And I'm very excited to continue the conversation. And thank you, Rajiv, for inviting me.
Great. So let's dive in. So I mean, we are told that people listening or tuning into this webinar may have been, at the panel in Bangkok, or may have watched the video, the recording. But just to catch you up, if you haven't done so, our guess is that most of the audience here is going to be people in smart contract security, well, in crypto security, or if not, are getting into crypto security. So the title of this panel was sort of just to keep it interesting. Both the title and the format was a bit different. So there are many things that we can discuss in this space. And just to put a method to sort of the madness, right? So what we said was, okay, let's do this. Let's sort of have one statement, and then every panelist essentially goes at it and says if they believe that it's a fact or a fallacy. And given that it is, that format, these statements are obviously meant to be spicy, if you will, right? I mean, they're meant to sort of be provocative in the sense of not having the entire context, not necessarily something that I personally believe in or the panelists believe in. I mean, they're obviously in a spectrum; they're not binary. But the statements that you may be hearing are going to be very short, and then we'll go around the panelists. We'll have direct questions to each one of them, and they'll essentially come in with their perspectives on that statement. And then all the other panelists will have an opportunity to chime in, to either challenge them or to support them with their own perspectives, right? So, for example, for people to get an idea, some of the topics we already discussed in Bangkok, where things like smart contract or on-chain security is overrated compared to the off-chain Web2 threats, right? So that brought in a very good discussion among the panelists about our smart contract security audits. Are people focusing overly on that? And when you see that in the last year, private key hacks really led to a majority of the exploits in terms of in terms of the funds lost, right? So it brought in very good discussions there. We talked about audits as such being necessary or being sufficient. We talked about the opaqueness of audits. Are they overpriced? All these aspects, right? So this is, so we won't be touching upon those necessarily. I mean, in the context of some of the other questions or points, they may still come up, but that is sort of, hopefully it should set your expectations. So like with introductions, we will sort of go around the panelists and the alphabetical order. And with that, I think the first one will be directed to Hari. And Hari, feel free to take your time in responding to this, and then all the others can come in as you feel necessary. So I guess the point to Hari is, the statement is, protocols are not taking security seriously. Fact or fallacy?
I think today I would say protocols are taking it seriously. If you asked me like 3 years ago, I would say no. So there's definitely a big change over the last 3 years in security, primarily because there was a lot of hacks in the last 3 years, and people have sort of gotten used to taking security seriously, to the point that if you are taking investment from an investor, they would ask you if you did a security audit. If you are going live on mainnet, your users would ask you if you are, if you've done a security audit. So I would say most protocols today are taking security pretty seriously, but 3 years ago, that was not the case.
Okay. Anyone else want to either challenge Hari? I mean, this all, I mean, these are you're representing some of the best projects, best companies in this space, right? So your perspectives are probably driven by the protocol that you work with. So I would imagine that you guys are working with the top protocols who obviously put the money where their mouth is in terms of security, right? But in general, right? So when you see, I mean, I think Hari's data point is interesting that 3 years to now, I guess driven by the exploits and driven just by the things that have become a much higher priority for these protocols, both from an investment perspective and otherwise. He sees that. Does anyone else? I mean, does everyone really agree with that, or?
I think I agree. I think also we see a lot of, for example, some protocol put some money towards other building on top of them. We see the shift towards security is very strong, and we see that. I still think, and this is related to what we discussed last time, that the security bar is very high, especially for protocol which didn't raise enough money. So that's a tricky. If you are trying to build a new thing, it's a bit tricky. But yes, I agree. I totally agree with Harry. I think things have changed dramatically in the last 3 years. Actually, even this year, we have seen more and more, especially with the big protocol, the fact that there's so many blockchain coming and blockchain have sufficient funding, so they will actually encourage. And one way to attract protocol is by security budget, because we know the security is a budget takes significant part of the R&D. So I totally agree with Harry. Here.
I like the last part. Mooly is reserving the right to disagree for the rest of the panel. So, yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, this is sort of just getting the, getting our feet wet or warming up for hopefully what will be more contentious points later on, right? So protocols. I mean, anyone else? I guess I do see a comment saying comment on the channel saying that the top protocols are serious, but there is still a lot of rubbish floating around as well. So I think all of us would agree to that as well, right? But from what you've seen in the last 3 to 5 years, things seem to be improving. Is the sense that I get, right? Josselin, Matthias, any sort of contradictory?
Yeah, to come back on the comment that was made on the chat about like some protocol are serious and some other might not be. I think overall, as an industry, there was definitely an improvement in awareness of security. We will always find, a couple of companies that are not doing like the baseline and don't doing like the due diligence, but definitely as a whole, like the industry, maturity has improved regarding like security, and like the awareness is definitely higher than 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think it even started earlier. In 2017, it was already a thing where people said like, hey, you need an audit, but it was more rubber stampy at that point. We improved along the bear market, which followed the ICO bubble. Then DeFi summer kind of was a low perhaps in security, launching quickly. And then we again improved a lot from there on. So the last 3 years, what Harry was starting out with, that's exactly kind of after DeFi summer, so to speak. And now we see multiple audits from the top projects. I think one new part where it's a little bit dangerous again is more heavy forking and changing, where you tend to take a complex code base and you do a small change. It's often hard to explain that a small change is still dangerous, and of course takes a lot of time to audit, but also to operate such a system, which you haven't built your own on your own, is challenging. So this is perhaps why we are in a much better like state than we used to be on security being taken really a lot more serious than in almost any other industry. This is the one thing where I'd say like beware, there are dragons here on like building, because we build on top more and more, right? And this comes with its own dangers.
One thing I think we've also noticed, and the talk from Peter from Coinbase at DSS last year was really kind of revealing on that, is that the focus on security has been mostly around code security, like code review and things like that. And there is, however, a huge gap on key management and like more of operational security issue, where I think people might not take that seriously as of today. We still see a lot of bad practices. We still see, people having like their wallet within their laptop. They go to event with, everything with, one a signature is enough to upgrade the contract and things like that. So I think we have become more serious at the code side of security, but everything around that, it's pretty much still the same that it was like a couple of years ago.
But I think, Josselin, this is something that we are seeing recently being improved. I think with people like you, the SEAL team, and the awareness is getting better. Also, the protocol themselves. I encourage, there's something like we participate in security councils, and we see that. So the protocols are maybe the big protocols, but at least even small protocols are becoming more aware of the centralization effect. So I think we are seeing improvement. People started addressing the smart contract, which was kind of the obvious, but I think people now aware of the Web 2 to Web 3 interaction. I'm sure the Sigma Prime, I think everybody understands that a lot of things going on with many things. Maybe it's your front end or anything, supply chain attacks. So people are aware of all the things, and I think the situation is getting better. That's all I'm saying. Maybe Peter's talk next year, I don't know exactly if it will be accepted, but maybe it will be slightly more positive.
You might be a bit more optimistic than myself.
Good. I mean, good to see that we are starting on an optimistic note. I think there seems to be rough consensus that things are improving across the board. Generally, the security folks are very skeptical and sort of leaning towards negativity, because that's what we see sort of day in and day out. So cool. So that's a good start. So let's jump on to the next one. This is for Josselin. Related again. So every protocol should have a security lead.
Absolutely, like 100%. Like you should have someone inside your company that has a title, security, in its just responsibility. That's kind of like the baseline for you to have good practices, to have an understanding of what you do. And, a couple of things to consider here is that don't put this title into one of your engineer. If you have like a large team, because they are not going to be able to make decision, you need to have someone within your company who can say, okay, we are not going to deployment until A, B, and C is fixed. You need someone who will be able to drive the security practices, to drive kind of like the mentality and the culture within your company. And that needs to be someone internal to your company or your team. We are seeing it, like in a lot of customers, we work with a customer that have an internal security team, or at least one person who has a security title within their job responsibility. The maturity of what they are building is just way ahead of everyone else, because they have this culture, because they have this mentality. If you have like, a small company, maybe you have like 3, 4, 5 people, one of your co-founder might be like the one owning security. If you have like a larger, team with like, dozen or even 100 of employee, then you can have like a more dedicated structure, but you definitely should have someone internally of your company that has security in his responsibility.
Cool. Anyone? I've actually recently seen opposing take on on crypto Twitter about this. But I'll come to it. But I just want to see if others have anything. I mean, this is very easy to support as security, projects as security people. But do people feel that maybe that's not the best case? And I mean, obviously, it depends on the maturity of the protocol and what stage they're in, right? So if it is really an early stage protocol with a couple of people, and a lot of projects start like this, even if they have the best intentions, their priority is shipping. I mean, there are many other priorities in terms of spend. So security, like we touched upon, just getting the audit and the contest and so on, depending on the complexity of the code base, could be anywhere between a couple of $100,000 and can go all the way to, depending again on which security teams the protocol wants to engage, right? So on top of that, if they need the security mindset, if they want all that, I mean, it can get overwhelming, right? So do people have sort of an opposing take wherein they do see this sort of outsourcing of security in the long run, even for, let's say, for the smaller protocols?
Yeah, I don't think you can outsource security. Like you can receive help from external provider, but if your mentality is that everything is going to be outsourced and you want someone to kind of just evaluate what you do and have no kind of like long-term understanding on how to improve, that's not going to work in the long term. In particular, if you are building something complex or something novel, there is a cost obviously of having like a security researcher or security person within your company, but you are actually saving a lot by having like this internal capacity versus just having like everything relying on external provider. So there is a cost, but I think it's a cost that you have to pay by working within the blockchain space.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, Mooly? I thought I heard somebody say something.
No, I said I agree. I think it's becoming more challenging with DAOs because the issue is that who in the DAO is there. But I think in general, I agree. You cannot share responsibility, but in a DAO is more tricky. Who is the responsible for the thing? But it's in general, I agree. You need yeah.
And I would add one thing here where I think Josselin touched upon this earlier, where a lot of protocols are not taking the Web2 side of security as seriously. And I've noticed that in teams that have a dedicated security person, they tend to be very much focused on the Web2 side, Web2 and like the OPSEC side, because a lot of the details, I think, let's say the founders or the protocol engineers, they may not want to like share like fully to the public, like how they do the key management, like where the keys are. And if you have someone internal in the team, like these issues get caught pretty early. Like we frequently hear very early stage projects where some of the private keys may be on like a laptop in their home, and an internal security person would know that pretty quickly and tell them to like switch it. And in my opinion, like they're more effective than someone externally telling them, hey, you need good key management practices. Like having someone who's like a teammate telling you is like more effective.
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
In this to being very effective, you can outsource certain parts, especially with specialized expertise, but because security, like you can prevent a hack on many levels, right? And the best way is, of course, to write code which doesn't have a bug, right? And that is something where you start much earlier than what traditionally is the scope for security or perhaps after the fact. And you cannot outsource this culture of thinking secure. This can only come from inside. I've seen this often very successfully, even on the CEO level. It's like this full trust. They might delegate it to someone they also fully trust and embed that, like, yes, it must be secure. This is just not a question. And then you can build a team outside or inside based on that, but it must kind of be part of your culture. And if it's part of your culture, how can you outsource it? Let's say I don't agree that you need a dedicated person who has like CISO title in your company. That's not necessarily needed. It must simply be something where to the top level, it is agreed that this is important and you strive to make that happen. And then it will be very individual on what's the best way to achieve it.
Oh,
I agree.
great
I
points.
guess it all boils down to the fact that there has to be someone within the company that owns security, right? So whether it's a dedicated CISO, if it's a big protocol or a big company, or whether it's someone who is responsible for looking after security things as well, right? There has to be that person. And yeah, as Matthias was saying, that's kind of starts the culture, security first kind of culture within the company that allows everyone else to build with, I guess, security focus. And I like what Harry was saying also about the Web2 and infrastructure and things like that, and phishing, and making sure people understand what those things are and what to be vigilant about, because it's not only just smart contract security, sort of like what we talked about last time, right? Like we're getting better at smart contract security, but there's still a lot of other things around it, infrastructure, Web2, phishing, all those sorts of things. And that's a long way to go.
Great points. So yeah, we'll be coming back to a lot of the things that have been touched upon in these responses. So let's move on to the next one, right? And this one is to Matthias. We need auditing standards and certifications in this space.
Good one. We can certainly benefit from like thorough education, sharing, and so on, right? So I'd say like standards are something which encapsulates what we learned from the past. They sometimes lead to that we forget why they are around, why we have those rules in place. This is of course very dangerous, but it also allows to kind of continuously improve and not having to learn everything from scratch. Our industry is still very young, and the way we do our work with like everything is open source and out there in the public, and we analyze the code really from its lowest levels to its highest and so on. This is a little bit special, right? And we spend a lot of time on that. But when we see this becoming more something mass market, I'd say standards become more important to scale efficiently. But standards, not the huge danger of standards is the gatedness of them, right? That you might have a entity where it becomes a little bit political, who's allowed to give out some stamp. Of course, for quality assurance reasons, it might make sense and so on, right? But this is, to me, a little bit against the ethos of like this openness we have here. A lot for us is, I mean, the brand, the reputation, the track record you have, of course, is kind of our standard, our certificate today. And this is very powerful because being able to consistently protect protocols over a long time is really something which can help people to really build trust, right? A good client of us always says like, yeah, because of you, we can sleep tight, right? This is a little bit the thing which you need. And I'm a little bit scared of standards eroding this because even up to the like financial world where you had like the lot of standards and then EY audits, like a company in Germany which then does the biggest wire fraud in history, and then it kind of gets picked up as like, is our standards just valuable or not at all? But today I think we could take value out of them as like a baseline for like, this is what you should do, this is where you can improve. There are soft standards, right? The SEAL team has this framework, and it's just a list of best practices. I wouldn't call it a standard if you come from like the worlds of big fours and heavily regulated entities, but it's super helpful because you just read, you see, it makes you think, right? And you need to understand. But it doesn't lead you to blindly checkboxing a bunch of things where everyone agrees you kind of don't need to, or it's like it feels weird. Few people might know why this was meaningful, but no one knows anymore, especially not the ones who are executing it. It's very easy to miss things. So yeah, these are my general thoughts on standards.
Yeah, one of my concerns, to kind of follow on what you say, one of my concerns with standard is that if we end up having standard within the industry, we might actually lead to lower the security maturity. And this is because if companies have like here's 10 steps you need to do, if you do that, you are good, it kind of creates a baseline. And when we have a baseline, the risk is that company will follow the baseline and not try to go above that. While today, because everyone is trying to push themselves, it does create kind of a situation where there is no kind of end goal, and everyone is just trying to do their best in terms of security. While if we have a standard, either the standard and the certification has like a low requirement, and then it's a bit worthless, right? Or it has like a really high requirement, and then like no one can really achieve it. So doesn't seem like, it seems like something risky where we can end up in a situation where the ecosystem is in a less secure state than it was before the standard. That's why, best practices, as you mentioned, Matthias, are a bit better because it's not like a hard requirement, it's more of a soft requirement. Something I've also noticed is that when we talk to regulator, most of the time they are like behind the curve. Writing a standard, writing a certification takes a lot of time. And once you have something you can release, it can already be kind of outdated. And given like the fast pace of blockchain, it sounds difficult to me to have like a certification or a standard that's actually providing value to the community.
Makes sense. Yeah. Go on.
Well, I have a little bit of a different take here. I think crypto today is like very different from like 3 or 4 years ago. Right now, we have even like, governments getting involved in crypto for better or for worse, and a lot of like institutional players. And I think these people look for like common patterns across like different projects that they're investing in. For example, I know like one big institutional player that would look at like L2 beat and read up on like each chains before they decide to put money into these chains. So I think there is like some level of like standards that are developing along the way. I don't think it would be like, the Web2 standards, but I think I expect like a lot more like enterprise and like this, traditional TradFi people to look out for certain things before they invest in protocols, for example. So like some form of soft standards are going to be very helpful, in my opinion.
For example, we release like the REC test, which is like a 10 list of questions you can ask yourself. For example, one of the questions is, do you have someone who has security title in your company? To come back to one of the first questions. This makes sense to me, like soft, we can call them soft standard, where the question is not something too deep and a bit more high level. Might make sense to kind of identify some issue. But yeah, it depends on what level of certification we are looking for.
And this has come up multiple times, right? I mean, so to sort of parse it a bit more and sort of flesh it out, right? So the way we do audits, I think that's what we've been discussing, right? The way we approach an audit, what sort of vulnerabilities are evaluated, and who does the evaluation from an auditor perspective, who are the researchers behind it, what are they looking for, how much time is spent, how much effort is spent. I think a lot of these things have been so, I mean, there is sort of a soft standard, I think, like Matthias mentioned, right? That there is some, maybe not a standard, at least an expectation that if somebody comes to a Trail of Bets, or if somebody goes to Sigma Prime or Spearbet Cantina, whatever, right? They have some sort of a standard in their mind that they expect from the audit of the review, right? But I think here what we are trying to also see is, can we, as an industry, right? I mean, just among the people on this panel, like the RECT the test that you mentioned, Josselin, right? I mean, that could be, I mean, that's obviously an internal effort, the public good from Trail of Bets, and then there has been other efforts in terms of I forget what it was called, from Diligence way earlier on, right, like 2018ish, where they essentially came out with a classification of vulnerabilities, right, like the CWE, CVE kind of a thing. So there have been those efforts, but it has been sort of driven by one player just because of whatever, right, circumstances. But the question here is, can we from a SEAL perspective or from some other perspective, wouldn't it be interesting to sort of at least establish a baseline? I mean, establishing a baseline has both pros and cons, but at least establishing that baseline will make sure that we bring up everyone else who's sort of below it to that, to that standard of that baseline. Right? Can they exceed it? Absolutely. Can we? There are comments on the chat box as well. I mean, we need to keep refreshing this on a sort of a I don't know, like a monthly basis, or if not annual, right? To keep it fresh. But I think all these things point to the fact that, hey, today, maybe we agree on what is let's take a simple example, right? My guess is we may not even agree on what is a high severity and a medium severity, right? Finding in general, right? So if you look at contests and if you look at reviews, there's just so much context behind each one of these that we have adopted. All of us have our own versions of the matrix that we use. I know, like Trail of Bits, I mean, you give a sort of a color coding as well. You have your own categorization of the type of classification of vulnerability, and Spearbit Cantina, and I'm sure Chain Security has its own. But as a whole, I mean, should we give up saying that, hey, this space, there's just, it's not worth it? Or is there some sort of better reason for us to come together and at least try it out, right? So I think that is sort of what the intent behind this question or comment was.
So I think it's a good idea to have baseline, but it has to be very low and actually, for example, not actually address things like whether it's a critical issue. Like everybody agreed that you need an audit. Everybody agreed that you need something. Everybody agreed that you need to have something to deploy. And I also think in this domain, I agree with Matthias, it must be soft. It must be something like, say, it's something very soft, say, here are the processes that you have to do to deploy. Here are the things, I mean, addressing the issue how critical is a bug is very important for a bug bounty or for community auditing, but it's not necessarily something that the protocol is aware so much. Maybe, but the issue that we want to know, what are the good things you have to do, like whether you have to have your key in one thing. It's almost obvious that you have to have sort of some kind of decentralization of your key. So focus on some very, very common thing, and I don't know if it's we or Seal or somebody has this some kind of list of soft things. Maybe it's Seal, but and then it's something that is available and hopefully affordable, because some of the issues that when we talk to protocol, they say we just cannot afford to do what you want. So you want to make it affordable and very, very basic, very, very basic. Like get I don't know, whatever it's something very, very basic. It sounds like you, Rajiv, want something very high, right? You want to.
I mean, high and low is relative, right? I think we want a baseline. I mean, the challenge that others have pointed out is if it is too low, then it just becomes, yet another reason to rubber stamp, right? So
No, but people know that they want to go above the baseline. Everybody wants, but the baseline is very minimum.
Right. Yeah, I think there are many ways. I mean,
we get right. Baselines are really, people get hacked because of baseline, following only baselines. So while I sympathize with the thought of like, yes, a baseline can help because some people need to start somewhere and then you need to tell them the basics, yes. As a standard where like the people Harry talks about, like the more traditional players, the regulated ones and so on, they need someone to translate it, right? And then if they have a standard which says these guys follow the baseline, but that's worthless, the whole standard is worthless. So yeah, I think what we should not forget, it's almost impossible to keep standards up to date with the technology. It will always move faster. It's a slow process, like Charles wrote it, and he runs one of the best standards we have currently, right? And this is simply it. But the thing is, there's education. Who do you trust? What can they do? And I think there we can also think about like standards, levels, and for sure what Rajiv mentioned, standardizing about the language we speak in audits, which trust levels, if you want to call it this, we give would really help. And this is also something which I have seen in the traditional industry where you agree on common terms and then you know if you call something, for example, like the audit versus review, right? Stuff like that. If you call it, everyone speaks the same language. And we could definitely introduce a language which gives you an idea about how much effort was spent on securing it. And then we can, as an industry, also call out players who give this but didn't invest that time and so on, right? We are pretty good at that. But we don't have that common language. So perhaps that's one of the things which standards could really help, especially for people who aren't in the security industry, to understand what they are getting and to be able to compare it better than now, where they kind of have to trust, because my friend who's in the security industry tells me Setora is a great company, so I'm going with them, right? And that's a little bit where we stand today.
Sorry, makes sense. I think there are a lot of ways and angles to look at this, and I think Charles, who's in the audience, is bringing out important points. So the ETH Enterprise Alliance or ETH Trust, so they're driving that initiative, goes back to Hari's point of how, while we may not want baselines, I mean, there are pros and cons, right? I think the enterprises coming in, so they definitely want some sort of term. I mean, the standardization, I think, is a very lower term, right? I mean, we think of IETF and similar bodies, but if you want some common language terminology, some baselines, either low, either somewhere to pull everyone at least above a certain level, then we'll need something. We may call it different terms, and like others pointed out, SEAL framework, I think, is a great starting point. I think the ETH Trust is continuing the effort of diligence on the SWC, the weakness classification. So a lot of things already happening. So let's jump on to the next one, and this is for Michal. Audits are mostly manual analysis today because tooling is still not there or still maturing.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. So it's always a mix of both, right? But I would say 90% of work currently is all manual review, right? So the tools are definitely used there to, find the low-hanging fruit, find the common bugs, find the bugs that that are so obvious that the tool will find it, right? But the real business logic issues or chaining several issues and vulnerabilities and finding those really tricky little problems, that has to be done manually, right? So at the moment, I would say that the vast majority of review is manual. That may change in the future with the better tooling, with advancement of AI and things like that. I don't think that will completely replace it, but will definitely enhance it a lot more. But where we are at the moment, it's a manual labor.
Yeah, I have a slightly different perspective here because while I agree, probably 80-90% of the work is manual, we are relying more and more on automated tooling, like pseudo-automated tooling from static analysis to Setora or further like Medusa and Cantina. And we are finding a lot of vulnerability using fuzzing and using invariant. Obviously, a lot of the work is still manual review, but the amount of benefit you get from a tool like Medusa is just really, really high. And if you look at our report, we have many findings that we found with fuzzing. We have many kind of situation where finding a specific bug was difficult with manual review, and just with using a fuzzer, it allows us to leverage and find us something within a day. So while I agree, a lot of the work is in manual review, I do think the tooling is an important piece nowadays. It's different from 3 or 4 years ago where maybe only a few people knew how to use this tool. I think today there's an increase of awareness and understanding on how to use this tool.
I agree with Josselin. We see actually the thing is that the point also, maybe we are forgetting one thing, that manual audit requires auditors. So what happened is that the issues that we have customer finding the bug before their purchase. So that's very good. So the issues that it's true. You are right that you find a lot of bugs, but actually we take our tool and run it after our best people from outside, from inside, and whatever, and the tool finds things. So the idea is that it becomes to a point And that's the difference between Web 2 and Web 3. It comes to a point that actually not using a tool, it could be a negligence, because the idea is that you are investing, you're paying, we don't talk about it, but you're paying a considerable amount to a human who is very smart to review a code. And now you have a tool based on fuzzing, formal verification, AI, I don't care. But you run it, and this technology is finding a bug after your person. You want to run it, even if it's the case that it's only 15% of the bug. But what if this 15% of the bug is the one that gets to the error that you steal your money? It's not an issue of percentage. The human effort, and also this is a case that Web 2 is very different than Web 3. In Web 3, in Web 2, to get such a tool to work will be very hard. Web 2, at least in the smart contract case, this is a very small code. We have actually worked with many of the teams here, and even for things for consensus, actually. Michal, you talk about consensus. With consensus, I can show you problems that we find that actually none of the people working in consensus working, because it's a delicate situation. And this is a case where we have such a big compute power. Why not use it? Of course, you have the human power, which is okay. People are smart like you, but compute power, using the compute power, whether it's a fuzzing, formal verification, static analysis, AI, use whatever you can. Why not? You're worried about the life. You're always going to have a time for human. If it's only 15%, people will pay for human. Don't worry. The issue is that you want to use the tool. You want to use the tool, and they're getting better. Whether it's a Torah Prover, whether it's Lean, and Kidna, Foundry, tools are getting better if they would use more.
Yeah, just to be straight, I'm not saying not use tools at all. I'm just saying pick the right tool for the job, sort of thing, right? So I'm saying that there's tools will pick up different things, that the manual review will pick up different things, right? So
that's actually surprising. We are finding that if you have good invariant, you find actually many logical bugs or even things like equivalent checking. You take a code that people optimize the gas, and you compare the two things together. You actually see that the optimization, and look at hack like the Kyber, which was actually audited by very good teams. It could be prevented by very simple. The most difficult part about fuzzing and formal verification is getting invariant. But there are some cases that you don't need invariant, even with equivalent checking or static analysis. There are some things that you can have, which is even low-hanging fruit, which could be actually interesting. Of course, so I think actually logical mistake could be identified by tools too, not just the simple thing. It's surprising. It's surprising to us. It's surprising to us. You can tell the thing on compound B2. Sometimes the tool finds things that we don't believe.
Good to see the debate getting a little more. So does anyone feel that tooling doesn't really matter today?
I mean, I have maybe a different opinion on this, where I've noticed that a lot of the top protocols, when they come for a secure review, they are really expecting to find new novel bugs, and which is a bit harder for a tool to detect. I mean, even though fuzzing and full verification can find some of these bugs, protocols come to us, a lot of the top ones especially, they're looking for a human to review it and try to think about how they designed it, and maybe find a completely new kind of flow. So a lot of the top ones are looking for radically new findings, and sometimes they need a human.
Got it. Okay, so just doing a quick time check. Looks like we may need at least one more panel to cover all the topics we had in mind. So I'll just sort of steamroll through some of the next ones. Just trying to see the more spicier ones, right? So I was going to check with Mooly about the space needing more auditors, but I doubt anyone is going to disagree. So I'm sure we'll all agree that we need more auditors, more researchers, more tooling, all that good stuff. So I guess I'll jump to this thing for Mooly. So Mooly, the one for you is protocols should do an audit first, followed by a contest, and only then should they look at formal verification. Something sort of very close to your heart. So
Yes. So the answer is no. I completely disagree. I think protocols should use everything they can, the earliest they can, the cheapest they can. And I think in particular, what we are trying to do, and I've been trying to do for a long time in a very limited success, is to convince people to think of specification early, whether it's fuzzing, formal verification, I don't care, think of things before the code is deployed and use our tool or Lean or whatever you want, I don't care. We are seeing protocol that comes to us actually after they go to the competition, and then we told them about the property, say, we wish we knew them earlier. We actually, I don't know if you know, we work with Lido, which actually now have the dual governance. We work with them before they have one line of code, actually. And we found a bug which is acknowledging the design of the code. So I think actually, and this is of course, we don't use tools, we only use humans, we use smart humans at the moment. But it's the case that we want to work with tools with everybody. And of course, community is great. You want to start with the tool early. You want to start writing spec early. You want to write starting things early, whether you use Foundry, further formal verification. You can actually work with our tool now on partial code. It doesn't even need to be compiled. We don't want to wait late. We want to start early. We have been doing it for Solidity for a while. Now we're doing it and actually we work on the EVM level, but now we work Solana bytecode format, WebAssembly. We want to start early. We want the security researcher at Cantina to use this tool, and some of them already use. We are seeing now recently with people report on Immunify. That's great that they use the tool. That's fine. We want people, but we want them to use it. We want the protocol. We don't actually want we are seeing security researcher adapting, which is great, but we want the protocol. The people who write Solidity, they can write invariant. It's hard, but it's actually innovative. Once you get it, you like it. There is some kind of a learning curve to write invariant, but the benefit is very high, especially when you have tools and you have compute power. So I say no. I would say formal verification first, or formal specification first, then go to manual audit, then go and then actually manual audit can review your specification. We can have a bug in the specification, and the community can review your specification. So it's the case. You probably know, a lot of you know about the Notion or some of the protocol that work with us, and actually they had a bug in the spec, of course. You can have a bug in the spec too. It's not a bug in the tool. So we actually want to find bugs in the spec. And if you do the way you are, you're not going to find bug in the spec. And okay, maybe you trust Certora, which is great. But I think actually you don't want to trust Certora. You want to trust yourself. You want to write these specs using our tool or other tools or English. Write it in a natural language. And actually even auditor, I believe, when they know. So Harry said that actually they are looking for people to find bugs which are known. Formal verification is the best use of this, is to find unknown bugs if you have the specification, because we're not specifying what's right or wrong, we're specifying what's right. And then the tool find what's wrong. So the issue that you want to specify the truth, you want to specify what it means that you deposit, and you want to do it early, sometimes before you write the code, and whether you use TLA or English, whatever. Write the spec. Say what you expect. Sorry.
Yeah,
sounds good.
I let Harry disagree.
No. I actually agree. I think writing spec early is always like extremely useful when you're building code and like building software in general. It can be a bit slower to do it, but I think a lot of the strong teams we know, like something I've noticed with like very strong engineers is that, okay, like there is this notion of like test-driven development where they try to write a lot of tests early on while they're building, and it helps you write better software. So it's very similar in that sense, where if you want to use tooling, if you want to use like automated, tooling of some kind, you need to start implementing it like right away as you're building the software, and waiting until the end it's just not effective at that point. Well, it is effective, but yeah.
By the way, it's not always slower. Look at Uniswap. The spec for Uniswap v2 is the spec that is used now until Uniswap v4. So it could be slower at the beginning, but then it's faster to it. If you are building software and you think that you want to stay around, if you are building the software for 1 year and then you are disappearing, maybe it's low. But the idea is if you want to stick around, once you know what you are right, the spec that we wrote for compound V2, we use it for V3 and so once you have a specification, you can upgrade your code faster because you know what your code is supposing and you're adding a new feature. So it's actually look at the spec for Uniswap V2. It says that it's constant market pool. It's a very simple environment, and you can use it. We use it for V4.
Yeah, to come back on what Mooly was saying, this is what we've been trying to push to our clients too, and it's what we call invariant-driven development, where similar to test-driven development, where you develop your protocol around the testing, you develop it around the invariant. No matter if you use a tool or if you just check manually or if it's just within the documentation, knowing your invariant beforehand during the design and during all the different steps of the life cycle is going to be a huge improvement for the end product.
Good points. So in the interest of time, I mean, just like with audits, this is a time-bounded panel. So we will steamroll. So I guess, maybe one quick direct fact fallacy thing to each one of you. Just trying to pick the best one. So this one goes back to Hari. So by 2030, all of us will be out of jobs because smart contract security will be solved by AI. Right, so we may have, just like your DeepSeek, we may have a DeepFind, foundational model for Solidity smart contracts that finds really everything, writes invariants, does the whole thing, and we'll all be out of jobs. Back to fallacy.
Yeah, I think all of us will have jobs, but it will look very different. That's my take. I think security in the future would look radically different than today, and I feel like we are getting to a point where we are fundamentally rethinking what does intelligence means, and some of these AI models are getting very, very smart. So I'm pretty confident all of us will have a job, but it's going to be very different.
We'll all be writing security prompts. So, all right. So going on to Josselin, coming back to the present. Right, 2025, we will see $1 billion exploit.
Oh, I hope not, but we will see. I think if it happened, there is some chance that it's not going to be a smart contract one, but it might be like a operational security one. That would be the most likely. But yeah, I hope not.
Okay, Matthias. This is a touchy point. So auditors should have more, quote unquote, skin in the game.
Again, yes. So the skin in the game is, of course, the brand. Having more in it in the financial terms is usually an insurance business. Can be blocking too. I really like that our space is so open that we can have startups, new single-person companies coming in. One example, like Harry might know, right? There is this guy called Chase who runs Light Chaser, one of the bots, right? It's common in the crowd competitions to have that. It's just one person doing this, and this asking for people to have skin in the game would stifle this for sure, right? So if you want to have skin in the game, you do an insurance. And if you want to have the best talent, who often happens to be 20 years old, checking your stuff, you do that, right? You don't mix those two things.
Good points. All right, moving on to Michal. So this may be of a lot of interest to people watching this, for people getting into the space. So the point is, smart contract security is a rewarding career for anyone interested in security.
100%. It is rewarding, well, monetary if you're doing bug bounties, if you're working in the industry, but also rewarding personally. If you like tinkering with things and finding bugs, particularly something that has immediate monetary impact, then it's a really good fun. I guess that's what also interests people straight away, because if you get into like let's say traditional pen testing, you may be working on web apps that not necessarily carry a lot of monetary value. If you hack them, right, you can't really, you don't feel like you're making that much of an impact, right? But with smart contract security, for example, there's a lot of money at stake basically all the time. So it feels really good, being a big part of securing it, and also potentially it's a little bit more motivating for some people. Hopefully, the good guys, the white hackers, to actually learn and upskill in this, and help us secure the industry. So no, absolutely, very rewarding in all regards. That's why I actually moved from Web 2 to Web 3.
Also super
Fantastic.
hard. So that is awesome, right? If you want to do something which is very hard and very rewarding, a few places where you can do that, and just crack some of the hardest puzzles we have, which are actually crackable. So yeah.
I agree, and there's so
us.
much good content. So I think it's great actually that we have this domain.
Great. So to wrap up, I think the final one is to Mooly, which is Web3 security has a long way to go and a lot of things to learn from Web 2, Web 1 security.
I think I agree and disagree. I agree that you have to learn, but actually we have to teach. There are a lot of things that we are doing, which is actually very interesting and very unique, and people can see it. Whether it's the security, the bug bounty. I think we are the two models. There's a lot of people, including people here, that actually innovate a lot, and the companies. I think it's very interesting, and I see what Harry said about other players coming into this space. I think it's we need to learn. Of course, there are a lot of things that we need to learn, but we can also teach. There's some things that coming in Web3 which are unique. I actually work in Web 2. I think it's very interesting. With a lot of things coming in Web3 security which can actually be beneficial to outside this domain, whether it's gaming, whether it's other things. A lot of people can use this, not just in crypto actually.
Fantastic. I think that's all the time we have. From my side, I think the fact that I would like to share is that we need many more panels so we can discuss more facts and fallacies, which has been true since Bangkok. So hopefully we'll see you all very soon on a different panel somewhere else, online, offline. So thank you all.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Thanks, Mooly, and thanks, Rajiv.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nathan. Bye.